that software that was mentioned in my Math Homework 3 and see what kind of cool stuff it can do. So remember that the software link is located right here in Math Homework 3. Just click on that in the module and you'll see that your assignments is pretty much every problem in sections 1.5, 6, and 7 here. They're finishing off chapter 1, and for 1.5 it seems like it might help if I was able to visualize some of these phase planes, or vector fields as they're called. So I clicked on the link there and I'm taken to this wonderful website. I'm so happy this website exists, in which I can visualize dynamics for a one-dimensional system or a two-dimensional system here. Polar coordinates, that's fun too. I'll let you click on that when you feel like it. And here I'm going to try out some system stuff. So remember that shark tuna thing we were talking about, where the prey X grows exponentially, but then it gets taken out of the system by the predator, so there's that minus X times Y I'm going to put in. Notice that I have to put this little asterisk thing there to denote multiplication. If you don't put that in there, it's not going to work, unfortunately. And then the predator has plus X times Y because it benefits from the predator-prey interaction, but left to its own devices, minus Y, it would die out. Okay, now since this is supposed to be dynamics of a population, I'm going to set my sights on just the first quadrant there, maybe even things out so that X and Y both have the same space from 0 to 5. And these segments just mean how many little vectors do you want me to draw. 20 might be too many, so maybe I'll reduce it down to like 10 on each, and you can see that that creates a 10 by 10 grid. You could make that more. You could have a 15 by 15 grid if you like, or 20 by 20. And there you have it. There's the phase plane, also known as the vector field, laid on top of the state space. And if I click somewhere, ooh, there's a trajectory, but you know what? That doesn't really look like what I thought it was supposed to be. I thought it was supposed to be a closed loop. And here I see this open loop getting away from me. So what's going on? Who's wrong here? Well, nobody's really wrong. The thing is that all of this stuff is being computed numerically. And so the kind of results that you get depend on the numerics. Here we're using Euler's method. It's pronounced Euler, not Euler. I know it's tough, but it's pronounced Euler. Euler's method is described in section 1.7, and the dt is denoted with a h here. And here the dt is set to 0.1, but as we learned, the smaller the better when it comes to accuracy of these numerical solutions. So let's clear out the curves and let's see what happens if I use a dt of 0.01. Huh. Wow, that kind of looks more like what I was expecting, because I really was expecting to see a closed loop there. Let me see if I make it even smaller, 0.001. Let's see what happens there. Huh. Okay, so I think it ran out of gas there. With such a small dt, it didn't have the patience to compute it very long. And so we have this like little situation where there's pros and cons to using a very small step size. That's question number 4 in section 1.7. Anyhow, you know what's even better than Euler's method? Improved Euler's method. Yeah, so let me try improved Euler's, and let me put it back at 0.01 so that I have enough gas to get all the way around the curve. Let's try that. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was. Yeah, closed loop solution surrounding a fixed point at 1, 1. You see that? So the thing that was going on here was that numerics weren't refined enough to give me something that was really close to the actual analytic trajectory. When I improved my numerics by changing this here to either improved Euler, or we can try it again with the midpoint method, or Runge-Kutta, which is kind of an industry standard nowadays, use Runge-Kutta, you're going to see that with a relatively not too small dt, you can get a better description of what's actually happening. Now, I have it set to 0.01, but let's see how big I can make this dt without moving away from the expected trajectory. And you can see that even with a 0.1, the Runge-Kutta performs really well. I don't know if I should do this, but maybe even a 0.5. I don't know. That's a pretty big DT. Yeah. See, that's kind of crazy. When you have too big of a DT, you're going to get some wild results. You really need to tone it down a little there and have some patience and use a reasonable delta T, like maybe 0.1 or 0.01. Really, you can see that it highly depends on the method that you have. We've learned Euler's method because it's really like the kind of original thing, the first thing that people thought to do. But we've thought of improvements from there. So you see Euler's original method with a DT of 0.1 does not describe what we were looking for. But if we go for one of these higher order methods like improved Euler, midpoint, or Runge-Kutta, with that same DT we get the expected results. And that's very nice. And so for the purposes of numerics, I would recommend playing it on the Runge-Kutta. Now, the other thing that's really cool about this website is that you have this other tab down here, numerical solution table, and you can see the time plots. Remember in my other video on trajectories, I was trying to go between the state space trajectory here and the vector field description, and then switch into the time series down here. Now, just so that we have a smaller time series, I'm going to change the DT back to 0.01, and that's so that you can see down here in the time series, I have kind of less of a time domain that I'm working over. But you can really see how the trajectory and the time series are correlated here because they have this really nice black dot up in the state space and the red and blue dots below tracing out the curves in time. That's super cool. Wow, this has been really helpful. So when they ask me to draw different vector fields in the homework here, I can confirm some of the things that I did by hand by typing it in here. Yeah, so let's go to some of the homeworks for this week. For example, section 1.6, further exercise 4 about zebras and wildebeest, and it says sketch the vector fields, include your calculations. Oh, really? I'm supposed to do it by hand? Well, remember on the homework here how it says you should do it by hand, just so you can really learn what's going on. And then it says a 3x3 matrix of appropriately chosen values is sufficient. So let's see what this all really means in context. I'm going to do further exercise number 4. I'm sorry, it's from section 1.5, not from 1.6. So on page 53, further exercise 1.5.4 about zebras and wildebeest, I'm going to try to type it in right here. The only big problem here is that in the problem it uses W and Z, but this thing always uses X and Y. So whatever you see there first is going to be X, and whatever you see second is going to be Y. So the W is going to be X. So here I am trying to copy in exactly what the problem has stated, but everywhere that I see a W, I'm going to replace it with an X. And by the way, everywhere that I see multiplication occurring, you see that I'm using that asterisk, and that's very important too, otherwise it's not going to work. Everywhere I see a Z, I'm going to replace that with a little y, and I'm going to close the parentheses. So that is the W prime equation that you see from problem 4 in further exercise 1.5. And the Z prime equation will be located here where it says dy dt. And again, Z is y, times is the little timesy thing, and then you just go on and type it in just like that. Z is y. Everywhere multiplication occurs, I gotta use a little timesy thing, and W is X. And then I got it just like that. I'm just gonna look over and double check, make sure I got it exactly right. And 0 to 5, sure, let's start with that. Ooh, interesting. That's kind of what the vector field looks like, and I can play around with it by clicking on some initial conditions, and the trajectories just shoot off there. Whatever is the last, most recent trajectory that I drew is what is getting described in its time dynamics here down below in this tab. And you can see the numerical algorithm taking place here in this table. And so that's really sweet. And remember when it said that at the very least, try to do a 3x3? So I was trying to reduce it down to a 3x3, but actually the lowest thing it'll do for me is a 5x5. So I don't know if you went that far by hand, but there's a 5x5 of the vector field. And so you can check your work as you're going through the problems. Super fun. What else can I use this thing for? Oh, I could probably use it to help me with the exercises from section 1.7 as well, where it asked me to implement Euler's method by hand. Again, if it says to implement something by hand and show your work, I really do mean for you to do it by hand so that you can really solidify what is going on in that algorithm. But at the end of the day, who's really going to do that all by hand, right? In real life, we're going to use technology. So here's a technology, and I will apply it to, how about further exercise 1.7.2 on page 67? Yeah, I'm going to try that out where it says the growth rate of a hunted lion population L is given by this differential equation for L prime. This is on page 67. And notice that questions 1 and 2 on that page of further exercises, those are both examples of a one-dimensional ODE. And so that's why I moved away from system and I changed over to one ODE, because anytime you're working for in one dimension, you're going to want to use this tab. Okay, I think the most unfortunate thing, I can change the variable. I was going to say, the most unfortunate thing here is that the original setting is on dy dx, and I've been emphasizing this whole time that for our purposes of modeling, time is the independent variable. So really, I would rather put this on dx dt so that the independent variable is t and the one dependent variable or state is x. Sweet. I'm glad they have that option so that we can make sure to be consistent about our independent variable always being time. And so since we're in one dimension, the single dimension I would like to refer to as x, and that's going to replace the L that you see in further exercise 1.7.2. So where it says L prime, I will now type that equation in. Everywhere I see a times, I'm going to use the asterisk, and everywhere I see the L, I'm going to use an X. If it's a parentheses, I'm not sure. I wonder if I have to use an asterisk or not. So I'll leave it without and then see if it works. Then we have L over 100, so I'm going to put X over 100 instead. Close parentheses, minus 0.2 times X instead of L. And let's try to see what we get there. Oh yeah, it seems to work fine even without the little timesy thing there. But I bet if you put it in there, it wouldn't hurt. So if you want to do that, you can. And there you see solutions. Is this solutions in the state space or is this a time series? Because I was used to seeing the time plot down below. It says time plots for systems. But remember, when we're in one dimension, the state space itself is also one-dimensional. So if I wanted to see just the state space, I would just be seeing a number line. And this is already 2D. So what that tells me is this is already a time series. Down here on the x-axis, or horizontal axis I should call it, is time. And on the vertical axis here is our single state, which is called x. And so we've already got the time series up here. They don't show you the one-dimensional state space because it would be so little. It's just a 1D line. Anyhow, what's really cool about this is that in question number 2 here, further exercise 1.7.2, it says the current population is 80 lions. So for my initial condition at time is equal to 0, I'm going to put in 80 lions. And then it says use Euler's method with a step size of 0.1. So I'm going to put it back on classic Euler with a dt of 0.1. And then it says find the approximate population at time is 0.2. So that looks like you'd have to numerically compute that just twice. But instead, I'm going to hard code in this initial condition of 80. And I'm going to submit. What? Oh, is that too big? Oh, okay. Here, I'll put it up to 100. How about that? Let's try now. Okay, see? There you go. And you've already got a time series of it here, so you see what's going to happen to the population. It looks like it's going down a bit, probably because people are hunting. With this, you see this is the hunting term right here. Anyhow, down here in the numerical solutions table, you actually have the Euler's method being carried out with a dt of 0.1 and an initial condition of 80, and you have the x and the delta x, all the things that you would need to implement the Euler's method yourself, you're seeing them in the table right here. So let's just talk about it a little bit. My initial condition is the value of the state x right here, 80, when time is equal to 0. And then in order to implement Euler's method once, the first thing I would do is I would compute x prime, which it says is negative 14 by 4.4. I would compute this number by plugging in the current state 80 into the system right here. So if I replaced this x, all these x's I see up here in the f of x equation with the number 80, I would get this number. Then once you've computed the rate of change at the current state, then you multiply x prime by dt. Right? And so that's why you see a minus 1.44 here, because that's negative 14.4 times 0.01. So that's what the delta x is. The delta x is the x prime multiplied by the delta t, which they're calling h right here. And then all you have to do from there is that once you have this delta x, sorry, I was trying to highlight just this one number. Once you have this number here, you're going to take your current state and you're going to add or subtract off whatever that value is. So since this is a minus 1.44, I'm going to do 80 minus 1.44 and I'm going to get to 78.56. Rinse and repeat. What I mean is then you would just take this current state, 78.56, plug it on back into the x prime, get this value for x prime, multiply it by dt, and then you would change the state accordingly for the next step. So at time point 0.2, I should get the answer of 77.15723. That's a very specific amount of lions, but again, don't focus too much on the assumption of continuity here. That's what we need in order to write these equations and benefit from the theory of calculus. Don't get too hung up on it right now, but anyhow, this is a great way that you could check your work on the exercises from 1.7. Okay, and as we turn the page to page 68, I see that the next thing they ask you to do is use Euler's method on a system. And so the same thing could happen if you click on system. If you wanted to, I'm not going to do that whole problem out, but if you wanted to type in the equations for a system, put it on Euler's method, put the dt there. Here, you would type in the x and y values, the states that denote the initial condition. So for example, on question 3, it says we start out with 98 susceptibles and 2 infected. So I would put a 98 and a 2 here with the corresponding equations up here. That doesn't make too much sense for what I've already got typed in. So for what I've got typed in, maybe I'll start with x is equal to 2 and y is equal to well, I was supposed to have this on 5. Right, so this is what I had previously. This is the other vector field we were working with. And yeah, if I wanted to start with x equals 2 and y equals 2, let's see what happens there. There's the trajectory, right? So I can specifically state an initial condition by typing it in here. And since I've got it set on Euler's method and I've got the dt that I'm looking for, I would have this whole timetable. This is all the stuff that's being asked for by hand for Euler's method on a 2D system, but it's nice to have this double check by using this. So I hope you get lots of benefits from this. Enjoy!